Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something really fascinating, the 5 questions that smart people flat out refuse to answer. Because here's the thing, the most dangerous conversational attacks, they don't usually come at you as loud insults or some obvious conflict. Nope, they actually arrive as calm, perfectly innocent-sounding questions. So let's decode them together.
You absolutely know the exact feeling I'm talking about here. I mean, you've been in that room. Maybe it's a performance review, right? And your manager just tilts their head and innocently asks, just out of curiosity, how do you think you've been doing? And right there, boom, you feel it. That sudden drop in your stomach, that visceral microsecond of absolute panic. You're thinking, wait, should I be completely honest here? Should I act super confident? What is the right answer? So you start talking. You overshare. And without even realizing it, you hand them all the leverage. Then later you're driving home and it hits you. You lost something in that room. You just don't know exactly what it was.
Okay, let's really dive into this because what's actually happening here is deeply grounded in behavioral psychology. Top-tier negotiators, trial lawyers, intelligence operatives, they all depend on this core concept called strategic ambiguity. And here is the secret. A question doesn't just ask for information. It completely restructures the conversation. It defines what is relevant, and it decides exactly who is immediately placed on the defensive. When you rush to answer a loaded question, you've already lost the frame. You're basically playing a game someone else designed, right on a board they built. So let's change the rules. We're going to walk through 5 specific psychological traps disguised as totally normal questions, and we'll see exactly how the most composed people on Earth handle them.
All right, let's start with the very first trap. Just imagine a colleague, or maybe even a partner, looking right at you. Their voice is soft, deceptively innocent, and they ask, "Why do you always do that?" Now pay really close attention to that one specific word, always. Not sometimes, not just earlier today, always. In a single breath, they've weaponized overgeneralization against you. They've essentially rewritten your entire history and collapsed every nuanced decision you've ever made into one single damning pattern. Now, our natural human reaction here, it's sheer panic. We immediately go on trial. We start defending ourselves against this supposed pattern that we didn't even agree existed in the first place. We build a whole case, we cite all these exceptions, we desperately try to explain ourselves. And meanwhile, the person who asked the question, they're just sitting back, perfectly calm. And why is that? Well, because they aren't the ones on trial. You are. So the intelligent response here isn't to start arguing about the word always. It's actually to refuse their frame entirely. You just use a calm pause and grounded authority. So instead of scrambling to defend yourself, you just look them right in the eye and say, "That's an interesting way to put it. What specifically are you referring to?" Look at what that does. It's brilliant. You just returned the question right back to them. You took back the frame, you put them completely on the defensive, and you did the whole thing without ever raising your voice or breaking your composure. And that dynamic brings us right into our second trap. It's an absolute classic in corporate culture. Can I give you some feedback? I mean, it sounds so generous, doesn't it? So collaborative. But if you look closely at the dynamic being established, you didn't actually ask for feedback. They just decided you needed it. In one single sentence, they've positioned themselves above you as the superior evaluator, and they've reduced you to nothing more than the subject being evaluated. Of course, the human reaction is almost always to just say yes, because saying no in a workplace setting, that feels aggressive or like you're being defensive. But the exact moment you say yes to unsolicited feedback that's disguised as a question, you're granting them absolute authority over your self-perception. It's honestly a massive dominance move. Truly composed communicators, they know that saying yes or no is a trap. Instead, they neutralize the whole dynamic with a clever redirect. They simply reply, "What's on your mind?" This brilliantly simple phrase completely strips away their unearned power. It instantly transforms an authority figure who's holding a verdict back into just a regular person sharing a thought. Just like that, the playing field is completely leveled. Now, the third trap is arguably the most personal and honestly the most insidious. Don't you think you're being a little too sensitive? Wow, this isn't just a question. It is pure gaslighting adjacent minimization. It doesn't attack the logic of what you said. It attacks the absolute validity of your emotional response. It's basically a quiet way of telling you that the problem isn't the actual situation. No, the problem is simply your broken perception of it. This is a terrifying lose-lose scenario if you decide to play by their rules. Think about it. If you get upset and defend your feelings, you literally prove their point that you're quote-unquote too emotional. But if you shut down and go quiet, well, You've just tacitly accepted their premise. The absolute only way to survive this trap is to completely close it by emotionlessly naming the dynamic.
You just look at them and say, I'm not going to discuss whether my feelings are valid. I'm asking that we address what was said. This specific phrasing, it is an impenetrable shield for your inner world. It completely refuses to take the emotional bait, and it ruthlessly forces the conversation right back to the actual objective issue at hand.
All right, next up, we face a huge favorite in boardrooms, heated negotiations, and political debates. So you're saying that followed immediately by some wildly distorted version of your actual position. This is the infamous straw man setup, and let me tell you, it is devastatingly effective. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why it works so well. Let's break down the anatomy of this trap. In the setup phase, when they intentionally distort your position, your brain just panics. Moving to the effect, suddenly you aren't defending your really great idea anymore. You're just frantically correcting this bizarre caricature they drew of it. And here is the worst part. While you're scrambling, everyone else in the room is watching you react. They aren't actually listening to your correction, they are reading your panicked body language. So the counter move is absolutely crucial here. You do not correct the straw man. You just return to your original statement, and then you use silence. Highly composed people just return to their original statement slowly and clearly. They say, what I actually said was this. And then they just stop. No frantic elaboration, no visible frustration, just pure, unbroken silence. Why? Because holding silence after making a clear statement signals pure, absolute authority. Which brings us to the fifth and honestly, the quietest trap of all. What would you have done differently? It sounds so reflective, doesn't it? It sounds like a supportive mentor inviting you to share your hard-earned wisdom. But be really, really careful with this one. In high-stakes environments, this is actually highly dangerous. We call this the confession trap. Managers love to use this in postmortems or exit interviews when projects go south. It's explicitly designed to extract a self-indictment from you. The person asking almost always has an answer in mind already, but they're waiting for you to blame yourself. They basically want you to give them the confession they were, frankly, too cowardly to deliver to you themselves. Intelligent people completely refuse to indict themselves like this. They just redirect it entirely. They say, the more interesting question is what the team does differently going forward. Look at that. With just that one sentence, you beautifully redirect a backward-looking trap and turn it into a forward-looking statement of absolute leadership. But here is the really profound twist, and I really want you to hear this one because understanding this changes absolutely everything. We've been looking at all these questions as attacks, right? As things being done to you. But the real insight, the thing that will completely change how you walk into every room for the rest of your life is this. The trap was never actually the question. So, the crucial point is, the trap was always inside you. It's your own deeply human need to be understood. Every single time you over-answered, every time you scrambled to explain yourself, you weren't being weak. You were just being human. You just wanted to be seen correctly. You wanted to prove that you were smart, fair, and reasonable. And these questions, they only work because they are expertly designed to exploit that exact vulnerability. The most psychologically composed people in the world are not cold, and they are definitely not rude. They have just simply mastered the ultimate defense mechanism. They know exactly how to respond without revealing too much. They understand that, hey, not every question deserves the full weight of their inner world. They engage without surrendering an inch of their power, and they manage to remain fully present, yet completely protected. So, the next time someone asks you a question that makes your stomach suddenly drop, just don't rush. Don't frantically explain yourself, and please, don't perform confidence just to hide your anxiety. Just pause, take a breath, and ask yourself one simple thing before you even open your mouth to speak. Is this a conversation, or is this a trap?